Hi, Judy the YouTube Lawyer here today with a pretty last minute live stream. I just felt that since this is breaking news and the U.S. National Skating Championships are going on right now, that it would be timely to go ahead and have a brief episode about the latest in a big legal settlement involving U.S. figure skating. So I thank you all for being here today or tuning in after this is recorded. But the breaking news is that the U.S. Figure Skating Association has reached a settlement with a former competitive skater, Adam Schmidt. I did see in one of the videos that it looks like he used to have a different last name, maybe Adam Baldani. Not entirely sure about that. Looks like he changed his last name. But so his name is now Adam Schmidt, and he is 36 years old. He lives somewhere in California, and he was a previous child competitive skater who had been coached by Richard Callaghan. Now, Richard Callaghan has been in the news a lot off and on. Everybody who is familiar with the skating world has heard of him because he was the coach of Olympic skater, gold medalist Tara Lipinski. He was also the coach of U.S. national champion and world medalist Todd Eldredge, world champion also Todd Eldredge, awesome skater. I loved watching him, loved watching Tara. He also coached Nicole Bobeck, who was a U.S. national champion. So everybody in the skating world has known about Richard Callaghan and all these like scandals and rumors surrounding him, allegations of him having sexual relations with his students. So I did want to bring up on the screen the most thorough article that just came out the other day from ABC. So I'm going to try to do the share screen thing here. All right. So here, this ABC News website has a very nice, thorough video about the case. It's about 20 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole entire thing here, but this is video of Adam back when he was a competitive skater. And here he is as a middle-aged man looking at himself and his skating awards and everything. So clearly he was on his way to being at the top, although I don't recall him actually competing in senior men's. Back then, I was pretty active in watching all this skating news and sometimes going to skating competitions to watch them and report on them. So here he is. I think he's going to get ready to do his big double Lutz jump, which is pretty awesome. So what happened to Adam was that, usually when a kid starts showing some sort of talent for figure skating, the teachers, the instructors of the group classes typically will tell the kids' parents that, hey, your child shows some promise and wouldn't you like to sign up for some private skating lessons? So most likely what happened was that Adam started taking private lessons. They usually cost a lot more than just taking some group lessons every Saturday. But that's how most people progress, is that you take all the group classes that you can, and then you start paying the big bucks to have your own private coach. And sometimes it starts with just maybe like a half-hour private lesson once a week. And then it just kind of escalates more and more, where the whole family just gets caught up in this whole cycle where you feel like, I have to pay all the money. I have to be at the rink every day that the rink is open. I have to move my family. I need to pay for this big name coach. So here on the screen, you see Richard Callaghan with his most famous students, Todd Eldredge and Tara Lipinski. So Tara Lipinski and Todd Eldredge have both been silent on this. I think they probably do know a lot more, dirty details about their former coach, Richard Callaghan. But of course, they wouldn't have reached the echelon echelon of the sport if it weren't for Mr. Callaghan. So you can see why some of his students still to this day do not want to speak publicly about what they may have witnessed or may have known about him. And I've been active in a bunch of different online skating communities for decades. And I do recall someone posting that, hey, you know, there were these women, these skating moms that knew about Richard Callaghan's reputation, but they didn't care because they had girls and Richard was known for just going after the young boys. So I'm like, okay, well, that just shows you how kind of screwed up people get, because when you're in this very insular skating community, it becomes really hard to separate yourself and have some sort of objective view of what's going on and realize, well, maybe this is not a good place for my family to be involved. Maybe this is not the right coach for my child, or I need to get away from here. You know, it's tough because there's so much money and time and just so much sacrifice involved that, especially when people think that a coach like Richard Callaghan could possibly take your child up to nationals or to the Olympics, you know, then a lot of people's their like judgment just becomes so clouded over by hopes of glory and winning that top prize, even though your chances are, you know, the chances of you being struck by lightning are probably greater than the chance that your kid is going to end up going to the Olympics, much less nationals for the national skating championships. So yeah, thank you guys for being here. Let me see here. Oh, thank you, Sandy Life. Thank you, Cade. Hi, Sliver Tears, SX, and Teacher Grace. Thank you all for being here. I know this was really last minute notice today, but please check out each other's websites. A lot of the people here also have YouTube channels too. So thank you for being here. I know this was very short notice. I just decided, hey, you know, just hurry up and do a live stream so I can at least get something out there on my channel while it's still sort of relevant and in the news. So let's get back here to this really interesting ABC News video that they put together. So that's Tara Lipinski, who now is doing commentary for NBC. So she's still in the news, in the limelight, but she has not publicly said anything about this whole scandal involving her former coach. So this is Phil Hirsch. He's like one of the most popular, most well-known figure skating journalists. I remember, you know, being in the media room with him a bunch of times, although I didn't want to bother him and say hi back when I was also covering figure skating for a website called asianathlete.com. That was probably about 15 plus years ago. So here Adam is talking about more about how he got caught up in this whole skating scene. And because he showed talent, he ended up, you know, joining the skating club in Detroit. He was so happy to meet Todd Eldridge when he went to the rink. And then the coach, Richard Callaghan, approached him and said, hey, you know, while you're here, would you like to have a private lesson? So that's how things progressed. I'm not really sure if Adam's family was from around the area, but most likely they did have to move so that he could train with Coach Callaghan. And then what happened was that, you know, this is kind of typical of pedophiles, you know, people who are sexual predators. Like they don't immediately come out seeming like they're harmful or bunch of perverts or, you know, just sleazy or anything. A lot of times the people seem pretty nice and normal, and they gain the trust of the parents, especially where the parents feel like, oh yes, you know, he is so important. He knows how to get my kid ahead in the sport. And sure, you know, let's just send our kid over there. So the kid ends up spending more and more time with the coach than they do with their own family members. And in fact, some of the kids that are really striving hard to be top figure skaters, they'll even move and not even live with their parents anymore. They might live with a host family or sometimes even live with the coach's family. So you get these kids that aren't even 15 years old, and they're already isolated in their own bubble. They're not even going to regular school. Most of them take online correspondence classes, which are kind of hit or miss. I remember former figure skater Sasha Cohen wrote an article more recently saying that she got a subpar education because she had sacrificed so much to be a competitive figure skater, and she wasn't going to any sort of regular school, although she did end up going to some really great schools, I think Columbia, though. But so this poor kid, sacrificed his life. And then what happened was that Coach Callaghan started touching him. And once again, at first, it kind of seems kind of innocent because, the coach was telling him that he wasn't able to do a good spread eagle, which is this move where you kind of have to aim to try to get your feet at a 180-degree angle. I mean, I definitely cannot do that. So the coach started, pushing on his legs, but they were out at the skating rink. But then it progressed to, the coach wanting to be with him off the ice in his office, and the coach was allegedly trying to help him stretch and try to be able to spread his hips wider. And then the coach started taking off his pants. The coach was basically nude and started touching him and everything. So this is kind of a sad scene where Adam is being driven by his old skating rink where a lot of this abuse happened, and he's like breaking down in tears practically on camera and had to stop talking because it brought back so many bad memories. So you do feel really sorry for this guy. And like I said, he's about 36 years old now. So I think he's very brave for being willing to talk about this and to even get a lawsuit going. It is really, really tough because as an attorney who has handled sexual assault cases and sexual harassment cases, you do know that, sometimes witnesses won't back you up, even though they might have witnessed something. It's just kind of scary to be out there and be willing to put your name on a lawsuit as the plaintiff. And then that you're going to be grilled and your personal life, some embarrassing things, maybe things about your sexual past are going to be brought out. You're going to be grilled about it. It could potentially get in the news as Adam's lawsuits did. So this is Craig Maurizi, who is also a figure skating coach now, but he was another student of Richard Callaghan's. And it's because of Craig's case that I think Adam Schmidt was able to build such a strong, solid case against the U.S. Figure Skating Association, as well as Callaghan and the Onyx skating rink that he sued. Because Maurizi said that he was also sexually abused by Richard Callaghan starting in the 1970s when Craig was maybe about 14 years old, I think. And it was just kind of brushed under the rug. I do remember in the late 1990s that there was some news and some publicity about Craig Maurizi finally coming forward and saying that, look, Richard Callaghan, groomed me when I was a young teenager. And then he started sexually assaulting me, having sexual relations with me. And not just him, but he also says in this report, Craig says that, sure, there were other witnesses because some of these other boys also participated in the sexual acts with us. So, definitely a lot of people knew about this or had inklings of it going on. But because figure skating is such a clubby sport where a lot of it is run by volunteers, there are skating clubs throughout the whole United States. And I used to be on the board of my state's skating club, which has now folded and turned into a different skating club. But, it's mostly run by volunteers, and they're usually parents of figure skaters. So everybody kind of has their own agenda, and you see some people that act like they love figure skating. They're really into it and, actively helping to plan the competitions, getting the judges to show up, currying favor with the coaches and everybody. But then as soon as their kid stops figure skating, then you never hear from them ever again. So that's what the skating community is sort of like. It's a very insular group of people who devote their time, often take their children out of school so they can hang out at the rink all day. And then they want their kid to get better and better and hopefully make it to regionals, then the sectionals, then the nationals, and hopefully they'll get selected to represent the United States at some world level competitions and then ultimately go to world championships and the Olympics. So it's very, very unlikely to happen, but it does breed this kind of insular strange culture where people spend way too much of their time at the skating rink, not interacting with other people, and then sort of being blindsided or just kind of ignoring any sort of complaints or criticisms or any rumors that, somebody might be a sexual predator. So I'll just switch back here and see if there's anybody else on the live stream. Thank you, Dr. Sev. Hey, Dr. Sev, thank you for joining in today. Guys, please check out Dr. Severine Bryan's awesome financial channel. So I'll just go on to this because I'm just kind of hoping that eventually people might see this, even if people are not watching right now on the live stream. So let's take a look here. So this is where Adam is continuing to talk about how, he was only about 14 or 15 at the time when his coach started touching him inappropriately under the guise that he needed to help him stretch more and get more turnout for his spread eagle moves. Okay, so he filed a lawsuit alleging Richard Callaghan sexually abused him when he was a teenager in 2019. Okay, so I did do a little bit more research, and it looks like Adam did also file a separate lawsuit. And that was, he filed a separate lawsuit against the ice arena. Yeah, so the ice arena was the Onyx Onyx Ice Arena in Rochester, Michigan, or somewhere around the Rochester, Detroit area. So I will try to do the share screen thing again. And this one is an article from last September. So hope that's showing up. Yeah, looks like it's showing up on the screen now. So in this article, this is from a local news source, clickondetroit.com, from September 24th, 2020, where it says former figure skater Adam Schmidt reaches a settlement with Ice Arena and Richard Callaghan sex abuse case. Lawsuit was filed last year. So this was a case against the Ice Arena, and he got a $1.75 million settlement last fall. And this article says he alleged that his coach, Richard Callaghan, sexually abused him for 2 years. He trained with Callaghan at the Detroit Skating Club in Bloomfield Township and Onyx Ice Arena in Rochester. The abuse began in 1999 when he was just 14 years old. Callaghan was banned for life by the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, a watchdog for U.S. Olympic sports organizations. He was ruled permanently ineligible for violations, including alleged sexual misconduct involving a minor. Callaghan had first been suspended in March 2018 while an investigation was conducted into allegations made against him more than 20 years prior. Callaghan has denied the allegations, and Onyx did not admit any wrongdoing. So, that's the thing with all these defendants. Even with the settlement, the U.S. Figure Skating Association is still saying that they deny any wrongdoing. Well, at least the cat is out of the bag already, and all these allegations, all these rumors that have gone around with this pedophile coach, it's all out in the open. It's just too bad that it's when Richard Callaghan is already very old anyway. So, I remember hearing in the late 1990s, after all the stuff came out about Craig Maurizi's allegations against him, that Callaghan supposedly retired. But then later on, I did see him at a sectionals still coaching people. So it's just really hard to get rid of the wrongdoers, because it is a very small insular group of people. It's a very clubby sport where the judges hold a lot of power, and the skating judges are also volunteers. And so you get this organization where you get a lot of people who just kind of get off on having that kind of power, or they like being able to, wield power over other people. And they like being able to, kind of travel at skating club's expense, because I remember when I was the test chair of my skating club, I did sometimes feel like there were a few people who seemed to be pushing the envelope with their expense reimbursements. I would be begging for these judges to come out and fly out to RDU, Raleigh-Durham Airport, because we needed certain high-level judges to judge some of our test sessions. And there are just so many rules and requirements, but not enough qualified judges because the judges don't get paid. Instead, their reimbursement is that they get like a free all expense paid trip to some place like to North Carolina, which of course, is not really the hotbed of where most people want to be for fun. And then we would pay for the judge to stay in a hotel, pay for their transportation, pay for their meals. And so some of the judges seem to, just be like guzzling down alcohol or, wanting to eat at really expensive places and kind of, I would just say a small minority were kind of on their high horse like that. I didn't like it, but we had to be nice because we really needed these skating judges to come out and judge our test sessions as well as our competitions, our local competitions. Nobody's getting paid to do this. So of course it does kind of attract the kind of people who are, either independently wealthy, people that just like to, obviously there are plenty of people who sincerely love the sport and devote their time and energies to the sport. It's not just about their egos, but, you always get some like bad apples in the bunch too. So, hey, Dr. Sev, thank you for being here. Such a disgusting piece of garbage to prey on innocent children like this. And some parents and adults turn a blind eye for the price of fame. So sad. Yeah. Definitely. I recall, I have a bunch of stories and stuff, but, one thing that I do recall more specifically on this subject was that there was a coach who was actually multiple coaches that I've been at different rinks. There was one coach that was just like yelling and screaming at a student who was like a, somewhat competitive skater. And so I told that kid's parent about the situation where the coach was like cursing a little bit and screaming and yelling at the kid. The child was probably, I don't know, like maybe 15 years old at the time. So I told the child's parent about my concern. And then this coach, I think, just assumed that it was my coach that told the child's parent. So the next day, this mean coach started screaming and yelling at my coach and saying, hey, don't even get involved in any of my stuff, just like putting her down and cursing at her and yelling. And she was like, what did I say? What did I do? Because apparently she had also said something to the teenager and maybe the teenager's parent, about this coach being verbally abusive and embarrassing the kid in front of all of the peers, right on the side of the rink, yelling and screaming and saying that, the kid wasn't going to go anywhere because the kid's jumps were all cheated or whatever. And, I don't know. It was just excessive. And once again, it was one of these sad cases where the child wasn't even in school. The child was already like 15 years old and couldn't even do a reliable double axel, which is kind of like the gold standard, I guess, for competitive kid skaters. Like you really got to get that double axel because, it requires the quick rotations and the height. And if you can't even get a double axel, then you're not going to get your triple jumps, and of course now if you follow figure skating, not only are some of the skaters doing triple jump or, all the triple jumps through the Lutz, but some of the girls even are doing triple axels or even quad jumps. So you just have to have that ability and it needs to be showing up quickly, before you're say like 14 or 15 years old. So a lot of kids and their parents, they're just so eager. They feel like, well, my kid can't do this kind of jump, but I heard that this great coach really knows how to get the kids up to their double axels or up to their triples, or we need to travel to go to the special expensive training camp, that will get my kid up to par so that they can win at regionals or sectionals or make it to nationals. So it's just very, very competitive, and most people don't get that far even. So where there's smoke, there's fire. So many signs were overlooked. Yeah. I did read a handful of articles, and I'm not really sure if this man, Adam Schmidt, did Adam actually live with his parents near the rink, or was he one of those many competitive kids who winds up just like living with some other family and not being properly supervised, where the parents don't really know what's going on? And that's just really sad. And it definitely does put a child in more danger for being abused or mistreated when the parents aren't around. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you for being here, Meal 7 Up. Okay, thanks for being here, you guys. So let's get back to the ABC article, because the ABC article is the one that is most recent. I think it just came out yesterday and has this very lengthy video about what happened, and getting a lot of more personal details about the situation from Adam Schmidt himself. So there's Phil Hirsch, the very well-known and revered, respected skating journalist, and he's talking about how the skating world is, and how people still looked up to Richard Callaghan and were still willing to overlook these rumors of him being a pervert, or putting the moves on his male students and stuff. So I'm not sure if this skating footage is Adam Schmidt himself, but that is a beautiful spread eagle. See, your legs are almost at a 180-degree angle while you're going around a curve. So Brian Boitano was very good at that and very well known for his spread eagles. So yeah, so what happened was that ultimately Adam did get a settlement with the skating rink. And see, this is where it gets a little trickier, because a lot of times, like, rinks might say that the person is not really their employee. The relationship between a coach and the skating rink can differ from place to place. So at some rinks, the coaches are just treated as independent contractors who have to pay the rink something in order to be able to use the facilities. And this is a picture of Craig Maurizi with his wife. And Craig is a coach in the New Jersey area. And I recall sort of meeting him back in 2007, because I went to an adult figure skating camp at the rink in Hackensack, New Jersey. So Craig seemed like a really nice guy. But the strange thing is that when Craig was I believe he was the director of that rink in Hackensack, one of the coaches that worked there, Nikolai Morozov, who's originally a Russian ice dancer, he also has I would just say he has a bad reputation in the sport too, because Morozov has been publicly known to date his female students, have sexual relations with them, even married them. Yeah, so a lot of people have this opinion that Morozov is one of the sleazier male coaches in figure skating, but nothing ever happened to him either. I think he has left the country now, but because Morozov had coached and choreographed for so many well-known top echelon figure skaters, a lot of times people were willing to overlook that and still say, well, I want my kid to go and train with this guy. So yeah, so Maurizi, despite being the victim of sexual abuse by his own coach, still had a rink where one of the coaches there was openly, having sexual relations with his students, female students. Although, as far as I know, they were all at least 18 years old, but he did marry one of them, just got divorced from what I've heard. And he married that student right when she turned about 18. Yeah, so that's just another little bit of rumor and interesting tidbits there. So let's go on here. So I was going on about how the rinks can be liable for the actions of their staff or of their coaches. If the coach truly is just an independent contractor that uses the facility to carry on their teaching, and let's say the coach is just, paying either a flat fee, or the coach might give a percentage of his or her earnings, I think, to use the rink, then in that case, then the rink typically would not be liable for any sort of abuse or actions or any illegal things that a coach might do, because the coach is not the facility's employee. But on the other hand, I'm pretty sure in this situation, Callaghan was an employee of the Onyx Ice Arena, and that's how Adam Schmidt was able to bring that kind of lawsuit previously against the Onyx Ice Arena and reach a $1.75 million settlement with them. Yeah, so but then on the other hand, you also have to think like, okay, in terms of the U.S. Figure Skating Association, the theory of liability there is that the U.S. Figure Skating Association is the governing body for the sport. They're the official people that give credentials, give credibility to the coaches, who all have to be part of the U.S. Figure Skating Association. So you have to be a member of the U.S. Figure Skating Association, and normally people belong to clubs that are officially sanctioned by the U.S. Figure Skating Association. Otherwise, you're not going to be allowed to go to competitions as someone's coach, or as a skater, you're not going to be allowed to even enter these competitions if you are not an actual member of the U.S. Figure Skating Association. So I did think for a while, I was like, okay, well, how come Adam Schmidt filed his lawsuit in San Diego, whereas the U.S. Figure Skating Association is based in Colorado? But then I realized, oh, well, because the U.S. Figure Skating Association is a nationwide national organization that has, their different clubs or chapters throughout the whole entire nation. So that's why Schmidt was able to hire, I assume, a local attorney and sue them in San Diego. So in this thing here, so Craig was talking about how similar to Adam, Richard Callaghan just seemed like this nice sort of fatherly figure. You think that he's going to do great things for your career, and then Callaghan would start, touching him inappropriately. They would be, in the car together, and Callaghan would have his pants down. So what's even sadder is that Callaghan was married. I'm not sure if he's still married to the woman anymore, but he was married for most of the time that these allegations were going on. And as far as I know, he also has a daughter who most likely is an adult already. Of course, you never hear anything said, no quotes given by the wife, who I think was also a figure skating coach. And then, of course, his daughter's not going to say anything against him, but how embarrassing for the whole family. So, so Craig is talking about how the U.S. Figure Skating Association back then, in the late 1990s, when Craig finally came public with his allegations of sexual abuse, it was just brushed under the rug, because back then the powers that be said that, well, you didn't file any sort of grievance or complaint against your coach within 60 days of when these things happened. So too bad, it's way time barred. So, yeah, that's pretty sad. It says, I was sexually abused by Richard Callaghan beginning when I was 13 years old till my early 20s. There were several hundred occurrences over the years. Yeah. And so, Craig Maurizi did coach with Richard Callaghan for some years during part of the time that Tara Lipinski was also training there. But something must have happened where Craig finally realized, look, I'm seeing Richard still acting like this with these like young teenage boys, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. And it's not normal, of course, anyone who's done any sort of reading about sexual abuse survivors, sometimes they do feel guilty because, maybe they did like it sometimes, or maybe they felt like they had encouraged it, or that it was their fault. So, and they have conflicting feelings, because oftentimes, like if it's a coach, maybe the coach did do a lot of great things to help the athlete or the athlete's family. So you have these conflicting feelings like, okay, but he was such a good guy to me on this level, or he was so nice to my parents, or he did this and that, to help me through my career. So do I really want to ruin his career by coming forward with sexual abuse allegations? Yeah. So, so it's very brave of Craig as well as Adam to have spoken out about this. And then of course they risk being targeted by haters and people blaming them, or saying, calling them names or harassing them or saying that they're a bunch of liars. So same thing happened with the John Coughlin situation. So John Coughlin was a former national pairs champion who committed suicide just about, I would say about 2 1 to 2 years ago, after some allegations finally came out that he was also like a sexual predator against girls at his skating rinks, that he had a history of inappropriate touching and sexual assault and grooming behaviors towards younger teenage girls, including one of his former pairs partners. So the same thing happened where some people were trying to discount and slander the people who said they had been abused. So that's just really sad. I mean, so I'm really glad that this kind of news came out. I guess the timing of it was probably deliberate by Adam Schmidt and his attorneys, to make sure that this is the time that everybody's looking at figure skating, because the national championships are going on right now. And so, this is the time to really alert people in general, as well as people in the skating community and their families, to be on the lookout that this is not okay, that if you hear of anything or you see anything where a coach is being inappropriate, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse, it could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, then you need to report it to the U.S. Figure Skating Association or Safe Sport, or, sometimes people just have to leave. That's not good for the sport's image, but if most people will refuse to put up with this kind of crap, then the governing agencies and the powers that be really do need to make a change. So this brings to light another more recent incident where there was a French skater, Morgan Cyprus, who trained in Florida, who was a top pairs skater along with Vanessa James. So they trained in Florida, but they skated for France. And apparently, or allegedly, Morgan had sent naked pictures of himself or pictures of his penis and texted them over to a 13-year-old girl who also skated at the same rink. And there were also some other allegations that he was sexually inappropriate with, I'm not sure if it was the same female skater, but definitely with at least one other skater at the rink. And what's worse is that the coaches allegedly, were trying to put pressure on the girl and her parents not to go to the authorities about it, because they didn't want Morgan and Vanessa's skating career to be impacted by it. Well, anyway, as far as I know, Morgan and Vanessa have retired from the sport now, but what a sad way to go. And also how sad that any coaches would try to pressure a 13-year-old girl. Allegedly, they had told her that she looked older than 13 and she needed to behave differently or not behave or dress in a certain way, something where they were trying to shift blame on her as if it's her fault. Good for her being 13 years old to realize, look, this guy's a pervert. He's a grown man, in his, I guess he's like maybe in his mid to late 20s or something, and sending pictures of his body parts to a 13-year-old, that's not appropriate whatsoever. And why would the coach think that, oh, well, we just need to hush this up because, these are like the best skaters that we're ever going to coach, and we need the money and we need the publicity and stuff. Well, I guess it backfired on them too, because now everybody knows about it. But the poor girl and her family, from what I read, they already quit the sport. It totally soured them on the experience, thinking like, great, we thought figure skating was this really great, wholesome sport. It's totally marketed as like this fun, it's fun for the whole family, and I do believe that ultimately, that's why I have been so devoted to the sport of figure skating myself, not as a career or anything, but it was my big time hobby. I really miss figure skating. I've made so many friends, had so many great memories going to skating competitions and skating camps and just hanging out at the rink. I've met so many wonderful people. I would say 98% of the people I've met through skating have been just terrific, wonderful people who, it's a sport, it's supposed to be a fun way for people to have athletic activity and also build a community. And just, we need more exercise in our lives, right? Americans in general have gotten so obese over the last 2 to 4 decades that we do want to encourage more people to take up figure skating, that it's a wholesome sport, that you can still enjoy it even when you're older. Look at me, I'm an adult, I have a real job, but I can't wait to go back to the skating rink, because to me, it was like the only fun form of exercise where I felt like I wasn't even exercising. The time would just go by so quickly because I was busy, going to do, doing a bunch of spins, working on my jumps, working on my, moves in the field and stuff, trying to pass the gold moves test, which I still haven't passed. But, that's why skating is just like such a wonderful sport. And it does make me feel sad to hear about these like bad stories of terrible, rotten apples that ruined the whole experience for some of these skaters. Even if it's not sexual abuse, like I said, it can be, or even if it's not physical abuse, it can be emotional abuse. Like you hear about like Gracie Gold, who is still competing now at US Nationals. She did mention in the last year or two that she had at least one coach that would talk about her weight and say stuff like, hey, look at your butt, like what's going on, like just making hints at her that she was too fat and she needed to lose more weight, or, maybe she couldn't do her jumps because she was getting too fat. So she wound up having an eating disorder. So you hear a lot about that too, with a lot of girls and also boys too, who are being told in very rude ways that your body type is all wrong for the sport, and you need to just starve yourself and sit around and snack on like one carrot, or even Adam Rippon in his book, he would talk about all his disordered eating, where he would refuse to eat this or refuse to eat that, and it just totally screws up people. And for what? This is supposed to be fun, and the chances of you making it big to the Olympics or even making it to nationals are just like infinitesimal. So it's just crazy, the kind of sacrifices and amount of money that people are willing to put into this sport. Let it just be for fun. When it's no longer fun and you're draining your family's finances and developing eating disorder or being sexually abused or being with abusive people, then that's enough. It's time to move on and do something else with your life and hopefully be productive and everything. So oh, hey guys, thank you for being here. Niner by Nature, thanks for being here. The LSAT prep thing is going to be on Sunday starting at 6:30 p.m. So I hope you'll be there. Thanks for being here. Money and power over doing the right thing. So sad. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, people just want to go where the power is, because especially if you're like a new skating family and your kid just really, really loves skating and the kid wants to be going to the Olympics and stuff, then some families, they don't want to ruin their kids' dreams, and they'll do whatever it takes, even if it means like refinancing the house, moving their families, splitting up the families where the dad is still working in one spot, but then the mom and the kid like move into like a tiny little apartment near the rink at some other training center, because they feel like that's the only way to get to the top is to be at a certain rink with a certain coach. The obesity rate, and yeah, exactly. It's just really bad. And that's why I do love skating. I totally promote figure skating as a sport, even if we're too old to make it to any sort of competitive type of level. Skating is just such an amazing sport, because you're going to get this total cardiovascular body workout. It really works on your core muscles, because you have to balance yourself right, your legs, your ankle muscles, everything. It's such a great workout, and you won't even feel really hot because it's cold in the skating rink. The cold air will cool you down. It's just such a fun sport. I really encourage everybody to try figure skating, and don't let this bad news of like this like awful coach, scare you away from the whole sport. Of course, that's insane. I feel bad for the women that have to go. Yeah. Well, even Brian Boitano would, the Olympic champion from 1988, he would say that there was one judge that saw him eating a hamburger at McDonald's one time and then made some comment that, he shouldn't be getting too fat or shouldn't be eating that hamburger. So there's all sorts of like inappropriate comments being made all the time. And ultimately, okay, thank you for being here. Ultimately, like people have to still try to remain objective about it all. Don't get so like swept away by Olympic glory and thinking that you're going to make it big. I would definitely like to, while I'm talking anyway around figure skating, hey, thank you so much for being here, Michael. Please check out Michael's Way of Kung Fu channel, where he gives a lot of motivational tips and everything. And he's also a Tai Chi and Kung Fu instructor in Colorado. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the figure skating community, but maybe some of these things I'm saying about the sport of figure skating are applicable also to the martial arts or the Kung Fu field. where you do get some people that are, overstepping their boundaries. There could be some coaches or teachers or adults that just don't know how to interact correctly with their students that are minors. There definitely needs to be training in all these athletic realms, not just skating, where people have to hopefully go through some sort of course about how to identify abusive relationships, what are the proper boundaries between the teacher, the coach, and the student, how parents should interact also, because, I do hear about, some rinks where you hear rumors of like some skating parent having an affair with one of the coaches, which I guess isn't as bad as, the coach having an affair with a student, obviously. But, there's just like so much going on with the dynamics at a skating rink or in any sort of sports arena, where you get like a small group of people that are totally devoted to the sport, and that's all they know, and they kind of lose sight of what the real world is or what's illegal. What's illegal? What's the appropriate way to respond if I see that a child is being abused, or I see the male coach kissing like a 17-year-old female student, out in a parking lot. So, these are all issues that we all need to be cognizant of. And also, getting back to the theme of my legal channel, you also have to be cognizant of like, what's the liability here? Clearly, the rink can't just flat out say, oh, well, we didn't know anything about this. At least in this case of Adam and Craig, they're saying that a lot of people knew what was going on, or they did tell people, or, that the governing body did know about other prior complaints, but then they failed to do anything. So that's the basis of imputing liability. So getting back in general to like sexual harassment law, or sexual harassment in an employment context. So if somebody is being like sexually harassed or touched inappropriately, like even in an employment context, you don't automatically have a great claim against an employer just because it happened to you. You have to have some sort of basis for imputing liability on the employer. And usually it's by saying that I did tell the HR, I did tell my upper manager or the upper management, and then they still wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't remove me or remove the wrongdoer from the situation. And that's why they're liable to me, even though ultimately it was whoever, ultimately it was John Doe who kept grabbing my butt, or kept making suggestive comments, or kept, saying that I had to sleep with him or else I wasn't going to get ahead in the company, so you have to alert the higher ups. And then, if they fail to remedy the situation, or if they retaliate against you, then, you would have an even stronger legal claim against them. So good for Adam Schmidt for bringing this lawsuit. And another thing that I think is of note is that there was no confidentiality clause, because most of the time when companies reach a settlement with a plaintiff, they will also say, then, this is all supposed to be confidential and nobody's supposed to talk about this to any third parties. Obviously, that means you can't go to the media either. But of course, Adam, with his great attorneys, they were able to negotiate this humongous settlement with U.S. figure skating, $1.45 million with U.S. figure skating, and then $1.75 million with Onyx Ice Arena. That's amazing that they had such a huge insurance policy. I hope he really gets paid that. So that was even better, because a lot of times these problems will just get brushed under the rug if people are okay with having a confidential settlement, because then the only thing that shows up on the public record is going to be, notice of voluntary dismissal with prejudice, and that's it. And then everybody can assume they settled, but nobody is able to talk about their stories. Like if this were confidential, then clearly Adam would not be able to get his side of the story told to all these channels. That's just amazing that ABC News picked up on it, the New York Times, USA Today, all these smaller, more local types of news outlets have also been reporting about Adam's lawsuits. So good for him. I think he is really, really brave. And I hope that he is not getting any threats or people making mean comments to him or trying to blame him or turn things on him, because that's pretty strong that he was able to get such huge settlements. It seems to lend even more credibility to what happened, and hopefully, the sport will change for the better. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think at least one of the articles that I read about Adam Schmidt's lawsuits did mention Larry Nassar. Yeah, so he was a doctor that was preying on and sexually assaulting these young gymnasts, right? So yeah, there. So everywhere you go, I mean, you just got to be really careful, especially when these are sports that cater to young children. You got these kids that wind up spending so much time, trying to perfect their sport, perfect their athleticism, and they're just constantly in the training grounds or whatever facility it is, for skating, of course, the kids just end up staying at the rink forever. Like back when I used to skate a lot more as a competitive adult skater, sometimes I would be at the rink for like a 7 o'clock or 8 a.m. session, but then there would already be all these skating moms. Usually it was the moms, sometimes the dads would be there, but there would already be a bunch of like really like wannabe competitive kids that had been at the rink since it opened at like 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. And they're just like out there. They got all their, like, they're all warmed up and getting out there skating. And then they take a break. They might do some of their like homeschooling correspondence stuff out in the lobby near the snack bar. And then they get back on the rink again for another freestyle session. And then they might have like some off ice ballet class or stretching or something, and then get back on the ice again. And then of course, there are plenty of coaches like that who really do, put pressure on the families to say that, look, if you really want your kid to get ahead in skating, you need to pull them out of school and they need to be doing this like online academy type stuff, because school does not have a schedule that's compatible with the skating rink's freestyle session times. And how's a kid supposed to train for at least 3 hours or 4 hours a day when they have to be at school until like 3:45 every day? It's not compatible. So I mean, I'm very much against that. I mean, I just would not want to have a kid that misses out so much on regular schooling. I mean, maybe for the last couple of years of high school, if they're really showing promise of making it to world championship level, but it's such a huge sacrifice and a huge expense for so many families. Skating is just really out of control. And the sad thing is that the economics of it is not paying off even for the very top skaters now. A lot of the skating shows have all just folded. There used to be Champions on Ice, which was, back then it was like headlined before it ended by Michelle Kwan and Brian Boitano. And then Stars on Ice had like Christy Yamaguchi and Scott Hamilton and stuff, back in the late 90s. But really, the support for figure skating has dwindled so much in the last 20 to 30 years. It's just really sad. So we definitely need to make some changes to the sport, because how are they going to attract more skaters and their families and the money and the sponsors? How are they going to attract more boys into figure skating if you hear about these like old perverted old men that want to prey on the boys, and just totally disgusting and everything. So we definitely need to change things. And it's just too bad that Richard Callaghan is already just so old, and he was probably going to retire 10 or more years ago anyway, before something finally happened to him. So, and then Dr. Sev says, hopefully lawyer fees don't eat up all of that, and he does get a substantial amount. Not that it fixes the past. Yeah. So the lawyers, I mean, I'm just guessing the lawyers are probably going to take some sort of percentage of whatever amounts they actually get. And the articles do mention insurance. So that's great, because what's the point of suing somebody or suing an organization if they don't even have any insurance? They could just like go under, and then you're left with what, just to say that, hey, I got this judgment, but they went bankrupt or whatever. Yeah. So good thing, some of these organizations or businesses do have insurance that would be able to cover that kind of settlement, so that Adam will get some of the money, or a large part of the money, once he pays off all his attorney's fees and whatever expenses got run up doing this litigation for several years. So anyway, so that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I just wanted to draw more attention to this situation in a sport that I have loved and devoted a huge chunk of my free time and my life to since I was 12 years old. Skating is still, to me, like one of the best sports ever. And I really encourage everybody, once COVID is over, to give figure skating a try. You're never too old. We've even had like people compete at adult nationals who are, I think, over over 70 years old even, so, it definitely gets harder the older you are when you first start skating, but you can always skate with a helmet on, you don't want to have a head injury, right? So that can be pretty dangerous, but otherwise, figure skating is just always just like this fun, romantic sport. You think about, just going outside skating, but nothing to me that's like an awesome sport. And I really do hope that this kind of lawsuit that Adam Schmidt brought will help improve the sport, and the sport will have a much better image going forward. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys who joined in today.